Well, if you don't know anything about biology, or if your training's like been 30 years in the past, then you might think that LDL is actually causing plaque, but it's just the mediator. It is not a cause. It is just a symptom. So what you really want to do... Hello everyone, this is Felix, your friendly neighborhood kidney hacker, coming back for episode number 5 of the Reversing PKD podcast. Today, our big topic is cholesterol. I've been getting so many questions on cholesterol basically forever. The reason, of course, being that the ketogenic diet, or the Bulletproof diet, which I'm promoting as being the best for controlling and reversing polycystic kidney disease, is known to raise your cholesterol levels. Now, there are so many people in this community that have been told by their doctor, oh God, look at your cholesterol levels. You're going to get a heart attack. You got to stop. You got to stop this keto madness, right? Yeah, this kind of training really is the problem. The doctors haven't been updated on basically any kind of science for a long time, and that includes cholesterol. They really don't know. So how would you know? Well, if you had been a member of our Facebook group, which has been existing for the past 9 years, then you would have probably found out that it's not much to worry about, and you definitely should not be taking statin drugs. Statin drugs are the most profitable drugs on the planet right now. There's a reason for that, and it's not that everybody has a big problem with cholesterol. At least not if you know the truth about cholesterol. So today we want to dive into this common myth and how to understand your values correctly. To begin, we want to start off by looking at what LDL and HDL actually are. What are they doing in the body? To break it down to the very basics, you can think of LDL as a bus that is full of cholesterol and trying to get this cholesterol to places, for example, to maintain cell membrane integrity or also to give the raw materials for hormone synthesis. HDL, on the other hand, you can think of as an empty bus going around the body looking for cholesterol to pick up, to bring back to the liver and get recycled. So both of these really are essential functions of the human body that we need to be healthy. Now, a ketogenic diet, because it gives your body so much saturated fat, will actually raise both of these because there's just more cholesterol to go around. There's more that can be recycled, and there's also more that can be deposited. If cholesterol is getting deposited in one of your arteries and then leads to plaque, this is not because of the mere existence of lots of full buses that sort of like lose their passengers or their cholesterol around the body because they can't really keep them together. That's not what happens. If cholesterol gets deposited in your arteries, it's because of inflammation. It's because the body actually needs to deposit cholesterol at these places to help your body heal. Now, if you have inflammation in these places and you put cholesterol there, you can think of it sort of as a scab. It's a crust that builds over a wound and that is starting to heal. Now, if the inflammation that actually caused the issue never subsides, then your body's going to deposit and deposit and deposit more and more LDL because the wound just needs to heal, but it can't because the inflammation is not stopping. Now, there are so many causes for inflammation, but the biggest culprit nowadays is oxidized seed oils. Oxidized oils like rapeseed oil, sunflower oil, canola oil, but even a small part of the fats that is in olive oil, for example, will also oxidize. I mean, all oils can oxidize, but the polyunsaturated fatty acid, especially linoleic acid, are very, very prone to oxidation. And we basically want to reduce our intake of linoleic acid from those seed oils, but also from olive oil and nuts to the very, very minimum. It used to be an intake of about 1% of calories in the 1900s and before. And when they started to industrialize seed oil production, this went up way higher. I think we're now sitting around 30% of calorie intake is usually coming from seed oils for most Americans' diets. A lot of this is, of course, hidden in processed foods and restaurant foods. And we really, really need to get this down if we want to prevent heart attacks. So the LDL that is getting deposited in your arteries, if you have inflammation, is not the problem. It is just your body trying to solve the problem that's actually there. You could also think of it as the fire brigade. The fire brigade is always going to be there, hopefully, when there's a fire. But they're not causing the fire. I mean, at least we hope they're not. But in most cases, the fire brigade will probably come and put out the fire. Of course, it's going to be at the scene. So if you're going to be an extraterrestrial coming to Earth, you look at all these fires that you can find, and there's always this fire brigade. Well, in the beginning, you might think these guys are actually causing the fire if you don't know anything about civilization. Well, if you don't know anything about biology, or if your training's like been 30 years in the past, then you might think that LDL is actually causing plaque, but it's just the mediator. It is not a cause. It is just a symptom. So what you really want to do is tamp down inflammation in all ways that you can. So you went on a ketogenic type diet. Maybe you went on the Bulletproof diet as I suggest. I really think you should be doing that if you aren't already, at least if you're PKD. But a lot of people can benefit. And you're seeing that your cholesterol is going up. What else can you look at to see if you have a problem or not? Well, the really interesting thing is VLDL, or also remnant cholesterol, which is very similar and it tracks a little bit with VLDL, and also the ratio of HDL to triglycerides. Triglycerides usually go up when you have all those bad CDOs, which we just talked about that you shouldn't be having, which hide in condiments, cakes, and all kinds of weird processed foods, salad dressings, soups, especially at restaurants. So make sure you steer clear of those. Now, these oils make your triglycerides go up, and the saturated fats will make your HDL and LDL go up. So basically what you want is to have your HDL be higher than your triglycerides. So in my case, HDL is usually above 70 and triglycerides are really below 50. So that's probably a good place to shoot for. If you think you've quote unquote done everything right and you still see high triglyceride levels on your ketogenic diet, then there's probably too little red meat in your diet. What does that mean? Or why is that? Well, the ketogenic diet actually increases your demand for carnitine. Well, carnitine is actually one of the main proteins required for proper fatty acid metabolism in ketosis. And carnitine is really only found in animal foods, especially red meats. So if your intake of red meats is not very high, or you're vegan or vegetarian, then you probably need to supplement with carnitine if your triglyceride levels are high. This has actually been shown way back in the 80s in a study on actually dialysis patients that had high triglycerides, and when they supplemented with carnitine, their triglyceride levels dropped as the transport of fatty acids actually was improved, which we need in the ketogenic diet. So if you're seeing high triglyceride levels, you should probably increase or begin your intake of red meats, preferably grass-fed beef or lamb. Another very interesting measure in your cholesterol tests is your remnant cholesterol. And the way you calculate that is just by taking your cholesterol, subtract your LDL, and then subtract your HDL. Most people probably think that would be 0, but it's not. There's actually a hidden value on your cholesterol blood test that they are not printing out for you. So you have to calculate yourself. And that one is a lot more interesting than the ones that they're giving you on the test. So the remnant cholesterol, for me, is actually -1. So, of course, these are rounding errors, so it's 0, of course. Having a remnant cholesterol level this low is a very good indicator of also very low intake of linoleic acid and other polyunsaturated fatty acids. Of course, you should still be taking your fish oil, but you should definitely be steering clear of most of the omega-6s and therefore also linoleic acid. If you want even more detail, there is a very, very cool tool online. It's called the Cholesterol Code Calculator. I have it linked in the description. You can use it to calculate some of the risk ratios of your cholesterol blood test, and it will tell you how you're doing. Most people that are going to be on the Bulletproof diet for a couple months, they will have very good results on there. And it's all going to be green, even though their doctor will tell them that they are at high risk of heart disease. That is simply not the case, as was shown by Feldman a couple of months back. he actually correlated coronary artery calcium scans with LDL levels, and there was no correlation, meaning people that started out with higher LDL levels did not have higher amounts of plaque in their arteries. There was no correlation. Now, another factor that actually influences how high your LDL will go on a ketogenic diet, is your body mass. So the leaner you are, the higher your LDL will actually go. It's correlated to saturated fat intake, which is high on the ketogenic diet and on the Bulletproof diet, but it's even more correlated to your body mass. So when you're lean, you can expect your LDL to go higher than if you're at a high body weight. Another common misconception is that the intake in the diet of cholesterol will somehow influence your cholesterol blood levels. That is not true. Saturated fat, yes, that will definitely influence your cholesterol level. Eating cholesterol just leads to it being broken down in your stomach so that your body can recycle its constituent parts, but it's not going to actually raise your blood cholesterol. So you can eat as many eggs as you want, really. You can eat those anyway, but it's also good to know that they're not going to directly raise your cholesterol. Your body is going to very finely control what kind of cholesterol it wants to have in your blood. And if you just start out on a ketogenic diet, it's very possible that there's a lot of damage and a lot of hormonal deficiencies that are going on. So your body is going to ramp up cholesterol production from that saturated fat because it can, before it probably couldn't. And you're going to have a higher need of cholesterol in all areas, really, because you've been deficient probably for a long time. So expect cholesterol levels to go up when you start on a ketogenic or Bulletproof type diet, because that's really what's normal and what's expected. Now, why are the reference ranges on blood tests so low? And why are you exceeding those? Well, it's basically very simple. The people that were used to establish these reference ranges were not on a ketogenic diet. They were basically on a low-fat diet, because that's what the standard American diet and also standard diets around the globe really have been for a long time. Governments have suggested eating mostly low-fat, and that has led to relatively low cholesterol levels in the total population. So when you use these kinds of populations to establish a reference range, then you're just basically establishing a reference range for people who are eating low-fat. There isn't an alternative reference range for people doing a high-fat diet, like the ketogenic or the Bulletproof diet. But also, really, we don't need an alternative reference range because we know cholesterol in itself is not a problem. If you go to the doctor's office and you want to check for arterial plaque because your lifestyle hasn't been optimal, you haven't been on a ketogenic or Bulletproof type diet, then most doctors will give you an ultrasound. An ultrasound can only detect the empty space inside your artery. It cannot depict how thick the artery walls have become. So whenever there is plaque buildup, it usually starts inside the artery walls and the walls get thicker. But if the walls get thicker to the outside, then if you can just see the hole in the middle, that will still look normal. So there have been plenty people who got out of the doctor's office with a clean bill of health and then drop dead from a heart attack, because if some plaque from some other place gets loose and gets lodged in the artery, you're still going to have a heart attack. So getting coronary artery calcium scans really is the way to go. There are several methods to do it, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper. This measurement will give you a number to track that you can use to see your progress, and it will be much more thorough than what you would expect from an ultrasound. As the name suggests, in a coronary artery calcium scan, you're going to get a score for the plaque in your coronary artery walls. And this is going to be much more reliable than the ultrasound because you really can see what's going on inside the artery walls. So that is really the measurement that you need to get and that you can use to track your progress over time. There's also a book about this from the early 2000s by William Davis called Track Your Plaque. The methods he uses are probably not really up to date anymore, but it shows that the total premise has been around for a long time and that you can actually influence the plaque buildup in your arteries by what you eat. And you can actually reverse plaque buildup. This is a really important message, because if you think you have plaque buildup, if you have it in your family, or if there's other reasons to believe it, if you've even had a stroke or a heart attack and it's not related to something else that went into your arm in the last couple of years, then it's a really good idea to get a CAC ASAP. So if you start on keto and you have high LDL, also high HDL, and you don't have high triglycerides, your cholesterol code report even checks out good, then you don't have high heart attack risk. You don't have high heart disease risk. You're actually doing good if your values look like that. The people with high HDL are also the people with high metabolic health. So that's how that tracks. And that is a really good indicator to see that your ketogenic diet is working for you. Over 70 is a good starting point, but it can even go higher than that. So to recap, you do not need to worry about your cholesterol levels. You really probably don't even need to check them very often because the standard kind of measurements aren't really super interesting. If you want to track them, then make sure you use the cholesterolcode.com calculator. I use it all the time for my clients, and it really gives you a much better overview of what's actually happening inside your body. Again, LDL, not a problem. HDL is great for you. The higher, the better. Triglycerides should be pretty low, especially lower than your HDL. Your remnant cholesterol means cholesterol minus LDL minus HDL should be lower than 15, ideally 0. Those are the values that you can really pay attention to. When you go to your doctor's office the next time and he is trying to put you on a statin because you're on a ketogenic diet, you might just want to skip that discussion, or you might want to educate him. You could probably send him this video or a lot of other videos that are done by Dave Feldman or Paul Saladino, Sean Baker. There are a lot of MDs and also very experienced researchers online that will give them a good idea of how the science on cholesterol has evolved in the past years. Now, some things that really would concern me if I look at a blood test of a client would be high triglycerides, low HDL, and also high remnant cholesterol. And of course, the other measurements that you can get on the calculator would also be a good indicator if they're in the red zones or in the orange zones, that there's really something to be changed in the diet. And it's usually CETOs from either processed foods or just plain usage for frying or deep frying. You know, fried foods are basically the worst thing you could eat. Sometimes it's also condiments. People don't really realize that their mayonnaise is a big problem. Yes, but we do have a great mayonnaise recipe on the website. So you can use MCT oil to make it. It's not going to raise your triglycerides. It's going to give you more ketones. It's a ketone building mayonnaise. How amazing is that? The recipe is on my website and I'm going to link it in the description. So if you ever get that craving for this amazing condiment, then go there. I use it all the time. It's super delicious and super healthy for you. So go for it. The nuts should probably be reduced to a minimum. If you want to eat nuts, it should be macadamia nuts because these nuts are the only ones that are very low in polyunsaturated fatty acids, especially the omega-6, especially the linoleic acid variant. They are mostly saturated fat, because they really are from the tropical climates, and that is the area where saturated fats can really be liquid at the outside temperatures. And the other nuts really are mostly polyunsaturated fatty acids because in those climates it can get a bit cold and they still need to be pretty liquid in the cell membranes. So that is why most nuts are actually mostly PUFA. Just the macadamia nuts are mostly saturated fat. Sorry for everybody who likes their pecans or their walnuts or their hazelnuts, their cashews. I can definitely feel you, but it's a good idea to refrain mostly to macadamias. If you can, organic. If you can, unsalted, unroasted. Try to switch off most of your olive oil consumption. There's usually a recommendation that's put out there by Dr. Mercola, which is about 2 tablespoons per week. Is a sensible amount of olive oil intake. You really don't need to go out of your way to eat a lot of olive oil. It's a lot better to get butter, tallow, coconut oil in there. You could even try and get some avocado oil, but there's a lot of issues with the brands tampering with the oils. Sometimes there's even no avocado oil in a bottle of avocado oil. And you really run the risk of getting a product that is mostly CETOs, again, which we're trying to avoid. So replacing CETOs with avocado oils might be something that looks like a good idea, but in reality, you have a very high risk of being fooled by the companies and then actually eating the same seed oils that you're trying to avoid. My personal hack has been to get fat trimmings from cows that I can get very, very cheap and make my own tallow from that. You can just use a slow cooker, put in like 5 kilograms, 10 pounds of fat trimmings. Just put it on the low setting, and you can put it on the balcony or somewhere outside the house because it can really stink a little bit. So that's a good idea. And then have it out there for 24 hours, give it a stir a little bit. And then you will have about 2 to 3 liters. Very, very cheap. And it's about the best fat that you can get, especially now that butter prices are up. If you can get fat trimmings for basically free, that is a great idea to hack your fat intake. Other than that, avoid the condiments. Use mustard if you don't make your own mayonnaise. Ketchup, of course, only for carb days. Skip the salad dressing at the restaurant. Skip the weird sauces where you're not exactly sure what's in there, or make your own. Bring some MCT oil to the restaurant and then say you just want vinegar with your salad, and then you can pour both over your salad. Those are some of the hacks that I use personally to limit my omega-6 consumption, my PUFA consumption, and my linoleic acid consumption, which will then optimize my cholesterol profile, because the other side of improving cholesterol levels really is intaking a lot of saturated fats, which you're already doing if you're on a bulletproof keto type diet. So yeah, you optimize your cholesterol levels very differently from what your doctor might think. You want to increase saturated fat, you want to lower your linoleic acid and PUFA intake, but still have some fish oil, because we really need that for our brain health. I hope that clears it up for you and for your doctor. So if you like this podcast, just give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating on your podcast platform. I would love it if you did that. And until then, I will see you on the next episode, and happy healing.